Hello and welcome to the third edition of What's Up in Global Law. And we have an outstanding group that's going to share with you today. And we'll ask each person to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get started on the agenda with the caveat that we're expecting some folks to be coming in, and we'll be adapting to that as they join. So let's start with asking Sloan O'Hare to introduce herself.
Hi there, thank you. I am Sloan O'Hare. I am Senior Account Executive at Alt Legal, formerly an IP paralegal. So made a jump to the other side, but feel very lucky to share my knowledge of docketing with other paralegals.
Thank you for that. Andrea.
Thank you for having me. My name is Andrea Evans, and I own the law firm of Andrea Hence Evans, a full-service intellectual property law firm, where we represent a range of clients from individuals to Fortune 50 global corporations around the world with patent, trademark, and copyright matters. And I'm also a best-selling author of IP books, all about inventing, all about trademarks, and more. Even have a journal that's out. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation today.
And Sean.
Hello, everybody. Sean Lebson. I am a regional director for brokerage, product development, and trade services at UPS. Been doing that for going on 25 years now. I also teach international business at night. And because I can't get enough of it, I'm active in the district export councils in promoting exporting for small and medium enterprises in the U.S.
Hey, thank you for that, Sean. Your expertise is right on time. And Jemima, as our co-producer, anything you want to say in introduction?
Hi everyone, I'm Jem Escultura. So I'm the events manager here in Global Chamber. So if you have any upcomings or future events that you'd like to do with Global Chamber, so I'm the right person for you to contact with. So Jemima at globalchamber.org. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima. And I'm Chris Bennett. My sister calls me a professional student. I'm actually a founding attorney of technology and innovation law, a social impact intellectual property law practice that has clients in the United States and around the world, and also the founder of IP Rights for All, which is a social impact legal tech startup with a software, AI, and blockchain solution that enhances copyright management for end users and also for their allies like attorneys. Now let's set the ground rules as we start today, because there's a lot going on in the world. Woo. First of all, we're not giving legal advice. Second, our goal for this discussion is to have you leave with more information that's useful, relevant contacts, and some knowledge. And with the firm understanding that you have a global community of people who want to help you succeed in your global practice. We don't just talk about law, although the law is the underpinning of what we're doing, but we talk about the business, the technology, and the policies and how those things interact in an ecosystem. I'm excited today because Andrea is going to be our guest co-host, which means she's going to stir the pot on topics we're going to go through. Sean and Sloan are going to tell you their whys for being in fields that deal with global trade, and they're also going to share with you why you should want to reach out to them, connect, and consider doing business with them. And Jemima is going to help to keep us on track and hopefully keep me out of trouble. That said, let's get started with the hot topic for today. And we had a little prep meeting, and I was telling folks, there's a lot going on. We have an earthquake in Myanmar, creating chaos and harming people, also affecting Thailand. We have the executive of the United States attacking law firms. We have global trade and 25% tariffs impending. There's more, but I'm going to stop and say best wishes for safety for the folks in Myanmar and in Thailand. But I think the 25% global trade tariffs is probably the biggest thing today, is a hot topic. Team, what are your thoughts? And I'll start with Sloan. What do you think about that? What's the hot topic for today from your perspective?
Well, I certainly think there's a lot of things to choose from. And I will certainly second your thoughts and prayers to those in Myanmar. I don't know. Let me see.
Andrea and Sean, want to jump in and help us?
Sure.
Well,
So ironically, my degrees are in math and civil engineering. So my favorite class at Georgia Tech was structural engineering. And one thing I learned about earthquakes is that typically buildings are designed to fail. In this particular case in Thailand, they had this 7.7 magnitude earthquake this morning, and they're not used to even having an earthquake. So of course they weren't prepared for anything, and everyone is devastated. So my thoughts and prayers are with all in Thailand as they navigate this disaster. And I guess, I know that Sean and Sloan are both from areas that aren't really necessarily affected by earthquakes, but have either of you ever been involved in an earthquake? Sean, have you?
I have not, thankfully.
No, neither have I either as well, thankfully.
Well, it's very interesting. I don't know if you all remember this, Chris, and Sean, but probably about 5 years ago, it was such a small earthquake. It sounded like a train kind of coming down the street, and everything was kind of just barely shaking. But that unknown and that feeling, that helpless feeling, definitely is scary. I'll just say that. And I remember that. And what was interesting is, my office backs to the woods, and I thought it was interesting that all the animals came out and just sat in the yard. So we had the deer sitting with the turkeys and a fox, and so I think it's something to be said that animals have some type of instinct, when it comes to a natural disaster.
It's interesting.
That's the share of a structural engineer. So I'm going to thank you for that. Thanks to Sloan and Sean for jumping in. And just close by saying I did see a short video, which I think was in Thailand. And it was a structure, a building that they were constructing that just collapsed. And there's some people trapped there. So even though I started with the 25% tariffs being the hot topic, I think earthquakes win the day. Well, so thanks for that opening share. And as we transition, Sean, do things like those natural events have any impact on UPS's business?
They do. Whenever something like that happens, I would say from the customs brokerage and compliance standpoint, very little impact, just like any other office would. But certainly from a distribution standpoint, when you've got vehicles that can't operate, they can't get out. Most recently here in the United States, we've had the fires in Los Angeles, which just completely shuts down service. We've had floods, I know, in Louisiana and in Houston, which have precluded operations and delivery. But these happen off and on in different places, depending on where you are. And you need to have contingencies when that kind of thing happens. You certainly don't want to just shut down operations.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess before we jump in our top 10 list, Andrea and Sloan, are there any contingency plans that you might recommend to clients with whom you work?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question. And Sloan, I'm going to ask you a question about that, because what I do know as an IP attorney is a natural disaster is an excusable reason to miss a deadline at the USPTO. And so it's very interesting because, of course, if your deadline falls on a weekend, we know it's not due. If there's a natural disaster today, then the deadline is changed. And so how quickly does Alt Legal adapt to these natural disasters and update their system, their docketing system?
Yeah, I actually think that's part of what sets us apart is Due to some of our connections to those databases, we're pretty real time, especially with the USPTO. We have an API connection. So as soon as it updates at the USPTO, it'll pretty much be updated at our system. Globally, totally depends on that IP office. Some just are a little bit more antiquated and more manual and take a bit more time. But once that data is available there, it'll be available with us. But I think having some type of docketing platform like Alt Legal really helps, especially in those moments of natural disasters. Certainly your minds are elsewhere. So having a system with your deadlines being tracked, getting daily reminders or weekly reminders is a really helpful way to even know what's going on while you focus your attention elsewhere on certainly more important things.
Chris, we saw during the COVID pandemic that when the government said, hey, you cannot leave your house to go into the office, that a lot of law firms suffered because they weren't set up to do business remote. So I think it's something to be said about being prepared to be able to do business virtually and to have good systems in place, good software, using tools like AI to help you and enhance your work instead of hurt what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Well, let me build on that as we transition to the top 10. That was a growth moment for our law practice, and that since we were digital out of the box, we were virtual, we were able to support a lot of clients, not only in the United States, but also elsewhere. And we're also able to give them some sense for how contingency planning that Sean mentioned and that Sloan just reiterated really matters. Let me go back to Sloan for one other follow-up, because she led us right into our global topic. How many different intellectual property offices interact with Alt Legal, and how big is your global scope?
Yeah, over 186 jurisdictions, direct connection to the USPTO and Canada. And then for the remaining jurisdictions, we use a leading data provider to fetch that data for us and help calculate those deadlines.
Way cool. So you're in the right place in the global chamber in this event. Outstanding.
Absolutely.
So let's build on that. So we're thinking global, we're thinking contingency planning, we're thinking of significant events. But if you're not thinking about AI today, you might be behind the curve. So we have this aspect of the show where we poll different large language models, and we ask them the prompt that you see at the top of the screen. What are the top 10 developments in the world today? And which one is most important? Previously, none of them had ever agreed. We actually have our first. It appears that Claude and Meta's Llama agree that it's related to climate crisis. But there are others. I think that that's right. I think that if the world doesn't work, there's no place for us to live and to do business. It's kind of like one of those slow, smoldering issues that could break out in a Class 5 hurricane, in an earthquake, in some other event that could be caused. What are your thoughts? What do you think are the top 10 developments? Is it captured here by Perplexity or ChatGPT or Llama or Claude? Or do you think it's something else?
I think it's
And I
all
will
a matter
share.
of, oh, I'm sorry. I think it's all a matter of scale. And if you look at here, Meta, Llama, and Claude are certainly looking at the big, big picture, which is climate change, which is difficult to say what is facing you today. For example, if you're in Thailand or Myanmar, you certainly have a larger impacting event going on right now. But in a large scale, climate change is important. Then you've got Perplexity and ChatGPT looking at armed conflict, which is certainly another layer or level of what's going on in the world. Or do you look at what's facing you today right in front of you? And I think it's just a matter of perspective. How big a scale can you be looking at when you're talking about what are the developments that are happening today?
Thank you for that, Sean.
Chris,
Andrea, Sloan?
that's an interesting question because I think it's relative to who you ask.
Yeah.
But what I do think about this question is when I look at the top 10 developments and I look at what AI is populating, these are definitely critical issues. And what I find is that having my IP practice, inventions are a direct relation to what's going on in the world. So when there are climate issues, we get more calls from inventors that may have climate solutions. When there are issues going on in Ukraine and Russia, our larger clients have strategies in place to determine how they'll proceed because, as you know, the world is watching and we're looking every day to see what companies' stances are on these issues. And if we don't agree, it becomes a problem and directly affects those companies. Sean, I wanted to ask you at UPS, has the ongoing Ukraine-Russia ceasefire negotiations affected your strategy at all?
Well, we have, since the conflict began, shut down regular operations in both Ukraine and Russia and Belarus. So really for us, it's a matter of waiting until something changes. From a delivery company standpoint, there just really isn't a lot of rationale for us to continue to try to be engaged either by sanctions or just safety of our employees. I know that we do coordinate for delivery of products into Ukraine, but like other freight forwarders, a lot of that is going through neighboring European countries, and then we turn it over to Ukrainian authorities who allow for transportation into the country. As far as Russia, as far as embargoing, really, yeah, by law, we have no engagement with Russian companies at this point.
Let me follow that up. That's an amazing share, Sean. How does UPS contract with people to do physical product, and then does UPS do services? And how do you actually negotiate that from a business perspective?
I can't say that it's one of those things that I'm engaged with, but we do have countries where we are, I'll say owner operator. They're UPS. We call them brown countries. Ukraine still is a brown country in that the operations there are run by UPS employees. Previous to the conflict, a better part of our operations in Russia were through subcontractors. And you'll find that a lot of transportation companies do it the same way, where there's a large enough business opportunity, we'll go ahead and open operations there. But some of those countries that don't have as much opportunity or have legal or business complications in doing business there, it's easier for a transportation company to turn those over to third-party vendors. You go to some countries, and I'm not going to name one because I'm sure I would pick the wrong one, but you might have a local operator that's delivering packages for several freight forwarders, DHL, UPS, and FedEx. And they all are put on the same truck because it's the one guy in town or the one guy in on that island that can provide service.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to back up to my 25% tariff is the original hot topic. Sloan and Andrea, how do you build a legal agreement or deliver a legal service in an environment where these tariffs are coming into play?
Well,
Go ahead, Andrea.
I was gonna say, it's a strategy, right? That we have a conversation with our clients to determine how they're directly impacted, and then determine a strategy in terms of what would be the best strategy to possibly file patent applications. So let's say, for instance, the tariffs, I see they're calling Liberation Day, and they're saying that I saw some eye rolls. I didn't say I agree with it. I'm just reporting the news today. But they're calling it Liberation Day, and there is some ambiguity around it. But there's a potentially 25% duty on imported vehicles. And so then the question becomes, as a consumer, am I directly impacted by this? Does this affect me in terms of purchasing a car, based off of this tax? As a company, then the strategy becomes, okay, where should I protect my intellectual property? And one thing that's important is, as we know with provisional patent applications, they hold your date. So one thing that's very critical about these filings and securing your intellectual property, especially for patents, is it is the first to file and not necessarily the first to use. So there may be some urgency in companies then saying, well, we don't have 100% of the details of how this will be made or used, but we want to secure that filing date and get that in. So that could be a strategy. And then we look at the companies that are directly impacted. But just as you started the conversation, Chris, everything that's going on in the world affects all of us, and we know that.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And Sloan, quick pivot.
Yeah.
Do these tariffs affect you at all now? Are you any concern from Alt Legal?
Up to this point, no. Who knows what will come in the coming days, but right now with our service being in the cloud software provider, we're not seeing any issues or any impact based on that. But we do have some global rates and things like that. So certainly considering the circumstances of others and other global jurisdictions. So things could come down the pipeline for us at some point.
Well, thank you for that share, because that leads us into kind of our next area. In the lower right-hand corner, you see an avatar for someone called Tilly. Tilly is our AI chatbot for IP rights law. And this is a shameless moment of promotion, by the way, because we do social impact law for IP, but we also have a legal tech startup. We asked Tilly the same question. We said, Tilly, what are the top 10 developments in the world today, and which is most important? Tilly said, I don't do global developments. I just do intellectual property. So Tilly was kind enough to tell us, in her opinion, as a not so large language model, what were the top 10 developments in intellectual property today, like digital copyright protection, and also to offer her opinion that the impact of artificial intelligence on IP rights and protection, in her opinion, is most important. I just want to share that with you because this is a resource that we're making available to our clients and to other attorneys who want to serve a social impact mission. So keep Tilly in mind as you think about things you can do to pursue intellectual property.
And
pivot. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
We have a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs on, so you're giving some good ideas where if you want to know exactly what's going on and hot topics and you want to then solve a problem directly related to that, it's probably a good idea to have this information in place. And I gotta say, I do agree with Chili on this AI and IP because the laws are evolving. And what we're seeing is the issue of inventorship when it comes to inventions, software developers using AI to develop software and then debating on if they can file a patent on the results of that software that was created by AI, which we know for now that is a no. But it's a very hot topic. And what I'm also seeing is a lot of my clients in other industries are coming to us and trying to take their business model and add some type of AI component to it. So I definitely agree with Chili.
Thank you for that, Andrea. We believe in being AI adjacent to our practice is essential. And for historically underrepresented communities, we believe giving them this tool helps them to find their own creative path and then to connect with attorneys and other allies who want to support them. So I'm going to give Tilly a round of applause. And thank you, Tilly, for taking a bow. And now we're going to move forward with our featured topics. So Sean, you're on. Tell us about your journey to UPS and why folks should want to interact with them.
Well, we talk about what's important in the world, and of course, it's all a reference of where you are. And for me, and I think a lot of business people right now, tariffs and trade activities are really where it's at. Started 2018, we had the introduction of Section 301, 232 tariffs. That was kind of a sprinkling. And now what we're looking at really is kind of a fire hose of potential duties under IEEPA or the International Emergency Economic, Powers Act. So originally we had duties on Chinese products, aluminum and steel. And just lately, I have a list because it's hard to remember all of them. So now we've got duties in place or promised for Canada and Mexico, reciprocal tariffs, duties on countries that buy from Venezuela, microchips, agricultural goods, alcohol, copper, lumber, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and duties based on country ranking. And as Andrea said, we're waiting for April 2nd or Liberation Day when we're going to find out what we can expect from them. And it makes it very difficult for an international business to continue operations. And you can read all about that in the news and all that, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the personal experiences as a customs broker that I've been experiencing with some of my customers over the last month. Worked with one company that was doing business in China. They saw the writing on the wall. Things are only going to become a little bit more tense with China, I think. So what they did is they relocated their manufacturing. They did that in January, and they were quite proud of themselves. They relocated their business to Mexico. And of course, duties going into place with Mexico, or the threat of duties, now they face the potential duty level that's higher than what they experienced when they were manufacturing in China. Very difficult to make those sourcing decisions when you've got actions taking place like that. Another company I was working with was bringing in product from Canada. Now, Canada stuff has typically been duty-free under USMCA for years. Unfortunately, the day they brought that product in was March 5th. And between March 4th and March 7th, we charged duty on Canadian product coming into the United States. So what would have been duty-free for 3 days, and unfortunately, one of those was the day that they entered that product into the United States, they were charged a duty of $62,000. 2 days later, it was back down to $0. Very difficult for companies to anticipate what they're going to encounter. Aluminum and steel. We've had an expansion of the 232 now where everybody gets that 25% on aluminum and steel products. And we've added a little bit, a dimension to that with derivatives, where anything that contains, not anything, some specific harmonized codes contain aluminum and steel, you're going to get dutied on that small component of that product. So now companies have to determine if there's a piece of aluminum or steel in that product, what that value is. That's been since March 12th. Customs still hasn't come out with clear guidance how you're supposed to do that. Now, these companies have been entering product for 2 weeks, and they still don't know what customs outlook is on this. And now customs could come up with guidance a month from now. They've had all these entries. Nobody really knows how to process these entries at this point. In the past, we've had decisions come out. They're always in the Federal Register. Typically, you have 30 days in the Federal Register. You have now, in the case of China, I believe it was posted in the Federal Register at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to be implemented at midnight that night. Companies' planning ranges are a little bit farther out than that. Now, one that was really good in the original Chinese duties that were put in place in February, there was talk about eliminating the de minimis level. I think this is one of those good things. You've heard about Temu and Shen bringing product into the United States. It's less than $800. They're not paying duties on any of it and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, because of the time frame and the lack of planning, customs wasn't ready to implement that. They couldn't process that number of entries. So the Postal Service threatened to shut down package delivery into the United States from overseas for a period. I know that at UPS, we had over 100 trucks at the Canadian border that we couldn't get cleared because customs was ready. Customs shut down some ports of entry. And even today, we're still trying to work out the billing adjustments that are done because of that overload for customs. So even customs can't manage to plan in this environment. So I understand US manufacturing is expensive. We're going to have companies, what can they do? Try to find a place that isn't hit by tariffs. After April 2nd, who knows? That might not be anywhere. You know, it used to be that Mexico and Canada were good fallbacks. You can assess your harmonized codes. You can see that what you're doing, is it actually something that's dutiable? I would say a huge number of companies are using harmonized codes that are inaccurate. They might be paying duties that perhaps they don't have to. Inventory management. If you don't have to bring something to the United States anymore, don't bring it here. A lot of companies bring their product in. This is their headquarters. They distribute from here. And that's the way of the past. If you don't have to bring it here, don't bring it here. Don't pay duties. Distribute globally from somewhere else, or limit the product and bring it in smaller batches than bringing in something you don't need to into the United States. Start using a foreign trade zone in the United States to defray duty and tax or delay duty and tax, duty drawback on the way out. There are a number of programs. It used to be a lot of companies would qualify for USMCA. It wasn't a big deal, so they didn't make the claim. They had governmental project imports. They had goods for the handicapped. There were preferential programs out there that nobody was using. Now they all have to reassess what they're doing to make sure that they're getting that benefit. And I suppose the last thing, and probably the intent of all of this, is to bring back manufacturing to the United States. Okay, not practical for a lot of people, certainly not in the case of weeks, not months. Years might be something that is manageable. But for the time being, we are, regardless of how you feel about policy, is going to be going through a lot of short-term angst and difficulty. I am just guessing that if anybody's watching the news, this weekend is going to be a fantastic weekend for car sales. Because everybody's thinking they're going to be paying $5,000 more for a car when these duties come into effect. And quite honestly, they might be right. I think that backing out and making that a little larger, I think that we're in for a global reckoning in the trade environment. Be it better or worse, it's not going to be the same that it has been. And we're going to have to adjust to that. Now, a lot of companies don't have the expertise to do that. And this is my plug. You've got a freight forwarder, you've got a broker, you've got trade attorneys. Now's the time to put them to work and make them earn their keep, because we're going to have a difficult couple of years in front of us.
Wow, Sean, I got to tell you, that was an amazing share, and it prompted 3 quick questions. One, when is UPS going to share their artificial intelligence engine to solve all that with the public?
Well, matter of fact, one of those things was introduced earlier this week with our next generation brokerage, that now we have the ability to quote duties and taxes for our customers and guarantee it. So if you're processing a shipment and you want to know what duty and tax you can anticipate going to another country, or into the United States for that matter, in the past, it's always been an estimate. And if it's off, it's off. You as a shipper kind of suck it up. But UPS, I believe, is the first company to guarantee those calculations, which takes some of that angst or unknown out of your international shipping.
And that got to the second one, which is, could our audience outsource this to UPS through contract?
Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to say it's just UPS. A lot of freight forwarder integrated carriers, some of those that have many facets or levels to what we provide. Yeah, we do this for companies every day. And matter of fact, I'm one of the people that manages that process.
And then third is, I want to ping Andrea and Sloan for any quick questions before we go to our next feature share. And just also note that the chat's blowing up. So I haven't had a chance to read it, but something's happening in there. So Andrea, Sloan, anything for Sean?
Well, thanks, Sean, for making those great points. And I'm glad that UPS is able to pivot, and it sounds like you all are moving along and should be okay. But what I did get from that is it sounds like small businesses will suffer. So that is unfortunate, because I do agree with what you said, that unfortunately, even if you want to transition products to be made here in the US, it takes time. So I don't think that that's something that could be done overnight or April 2nd.
Sloan, anything from
Yeah,
your perspective?
I think that's a great point, because you can think even some of these massive corporations aren't going to be able to do it on a quick timeline. So probably forget it for some of the small businesses. But Sean, it sounds like you and your team are really staying on top of it, trying to be cognizant from a business perspective, but also keep that human emotional aspect in consideration too, which I'm sure doesn't go unnoticed by your customers and people that you interact with.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of small companies that have business plans that are throwing us under. I remember in the original 2018 tariffs, I had a customer that was in the United States, from the United States, traveling to Hong Kong. And she was saying, my entire business model has been shot overnight, because what was duty free, she was now paying 25% on. companies that canceled initiatives or business plans because, well, the world changed around them.
Well, Sean, thank you for that. And I will say that the Global Chamber's been doing a number of events, and they have a number of different organizations that can assist. So do reach out to the Global Chamber either through me or through Jemima or others. There may be some resources to help small business especially. And you have Sean as a resource for larger organizations. And this is a great pivot point to our second feature.
Good.
And that's
Sean,
going to be,
could I just add a comment? My firm is working with several automotive and agricultural in the tariffs cross-border, both changing people's categories, the content. We're making filings like crazy. But also, in Sean's point, I went out and bought a car last weekend too. So you're right on, man.
You got me thinking there.
and Sloan, right on time, because tell us about your journey in alt legal.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, I feel fortunate we have not yet had any direct impact based on any of the tariffs. Fortunately, things are moving along swimmingly for us at Alt Legal. So thank you. I am grateful to be here today. If you are not already familiar with us, I'm very excited to introduce you all to Alt Legal, where trademark management meets innovation and seamless efficiency. So we've been around for over a decade, and we've been at the forefront of revolutionizing trademark docketing. We don't focus just on managing deadlines. We want to really transform how you interact with your trademark portfolio. We want you to love your docketing software. We want it to feel sophisticated, but also user-friendly, so that it practically syncs with efficiency. So we serve over 1,300 customers globally across more than 35 countries. Which I think speaks volumes about the trust that the IP professionals place in our platform. And what sets us apart, I think, is our commitment to automation. We have designed our software to eliminate some of those manual, tedious tasks that can come with traditional docketing. And through our, as I mentioned, API connection to the USPTO, we can help really automate and auto-track filings, bringing in your filings, the deadlines, and the documents from the USPTO based on a correspondent email address. We'll update those statuses. We can even remove deadlines without that manual work. But don't worry, globally, we've got you covered. We partner with a leading provider to fetch that data from over 180 global offices to calculate your use and renewal deadlines across the world. But not just about the automation. We want to empower you with insights. We have a global dashboard so you can see where there might be some coverage gaps, where your portfolio lies globally. We also will keep you in the know via calendar syncing and automated daily email reports with upcoming deadlines and any status changes to help keep you ahead of the curve and be that trusted advisor for your clients. Another thing that sets us apart is our customer support. Our US-based team is not just responsive. They're really, really fast. They're really kind and knowledgeable. You can reach them via phone or email, but we also have live chat built into the system, so you can kind of have that help right at your fingertips. I love our support team. I think they're wonderful, wonderful group of folks. Additionally, imagine having a trademark angel watching over your USPTO portfolio 24/7. That is our trademark protection tools. It integrates seamlessly with the docketing software to help you monitor your trademarks, alerting you of those potential conflicts, whether it's at a new filing or if it's cited in a Section 2D office action by an examiner, helping to ensure that proactive protection of either yours or your client's IP. And we're not just about software. We're really about building a community, from our pun-filled newsletters to free monthly CLE webinars, a rich resource library. We're here to make trademarks not just a job, but a passion. We, like I said, want you to love it. And I also want to mention we partner with an organization called Brand Action. If you're not yet familiar with Brand Action, I highly recommend taking a look. They're doing incredible work. It's a bunch of IP professionals, starting with one from Ukraine. I know that they've raised money enough for 2 ambulances to be delivered to Ukraine. So tons of great work done by Brand Action, and we're very fortunate to be, in affiliation with them. And then additionally, we reinvest 50% of every dollar back into the product to ensure that we stay at the cutting edge of trademark docketing. Innovation is at the heart of what we do. We want to ensure that we stay the best in class software for IP professionals. So we talked off air before this call started. We have grown a ton in the last 10 years, and we anticipate continuing to grow. We won't stay stagnant. We want to continue to provide that best support. So if any of you are ready, if you're not already elevating your trademark game and being a part of a community that loves trademarks as much as we do, come join Alt Legal. We'll help you make managing your trademarks a joyous journey.
Wow. Thank you for that, Sloan. And I got to say that like a judge in a courtroom, I got to keep things running on schedule. So we have like 5 more minutes to go. So I'm going to power through the rest of it, but I will shamelessly say that there are 2 practicing attorneys in IP on today, and both are Alt Legal clients. So, we can give a testament to everything that Sloan mentioned and more, but
Happy to hear that.
we're on the clock. So that said, let's try to bring it home. First, hot mic moments. I didn't get a chance to read the chat. Has anyone looked at the chat and seen something they think merits a hot mic moment, or someone that's in the audience? If you have something brief that you think is super important, come off mute and say it. And while we think about that, I'm actually going to look in the chat. I'm going to peek and just see if there's anything in there that we think is a hot mic moment. I think the hot mic moment is one related to global peace. We have issues in a number of areas in the world, and I think I heard data from the United Nations that we now have more armed conflicts than ever in foreign history since they've been recording it. That affects global trade, and it also just affects quality of life. So I don't know, what are your thoughts briefly, team, on how do we get to global peace, and what can we do as the global chamber or even attorney practitioners to advance that, in addition to what Sloan had mentioned with Brand Action, for example?
If only we could solve that here. And I guess now we're getting into policy decisions, but one of the things that strikes me is the Ukraine-Russia conflict, or, okay, a little bit of opinion here, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that I have some background in the area. I used to work in Ukraine, and I went to Moscow State University, not like yay state, but the yay state, when I was in grad school. But I think that we have an element of authoritarianism in Russia and elsewhere that's been emboldened. And I know that this administration has put the blame on the US withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I think that in some ways that's true, because it emboldened some of these autocratic leaders, feeling that they can really push the envelope and do some things that really you wouldn't anticipate in a 21st century world. You look at the Russian invasion, you want to go, what is this? Is it the 19th century? And as much as I want to say that I'm pushing toward peace, really we need to do what we can to deter some of these global bullies from taking action like that. And I think that based on what we see happening in Ukraine, we'll see what ultimately happens in Taiwan, and which ultimately happens in other places where these emboldened autocratic leaders think they can get away with it.
Well,
I'm
Sean,
opening up a can of worms there, aren't I?
No, actually, because we're on a schedule, you get the last word on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that's the hot mic moment to close on. drop the mic, no need to go further and move us forward in the agenda, because I'm not judging the courtroom again on schedule. So Sean had shared his perspective, and people may disagree, but that's one way to look at it. And I will share that I agree. That said, we're now transitioning into closing it up, because I recognize we're a little bit over. We will be in a couple minutes. So I want to try to close it up and give you a nice transition send off. Speaking of transition, next show. One of the speakers is on, and that's Mike, a partner at a national and international law firm who's going to be on the panel. And we also have some very exciting other speakers that will be joining us next month. We'll get that information out to you. That's why you should make What's Up in Global Law a monthly program to keep up with what's happening. And speaking of what's happening, it's time to close it up as a happening. So we're going to ask each of our panelists to briefly give their closing remarks on why global and law matter. And let's go with Andrea first, and then we'll do Sloan and Sean.
Well, thank you again, Chris, for allowing me to co-host this dynamic conversation today. And why global and law matters is because we depend on a global society to invent, to have these diverse ideas. And essentially what I'll say is diversity is a form of power. And so when you have all these unique ideas and global issues, and you're able to brainstorm, just like what we've done today during this conversation, it makes you think and have a lot of good critical conversation skills. And I've really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Sloan, closing remarks.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think despite all of the bad or scary things that could be going on in the world right now, I think a lot of people take some of those moments and feel really empowered to innovate and create and help one another and try to rebuild communities and strengthen those communities. And so a lot of that is done through intellectual property, new ideas, new inventions. And so I think it's really great to allow them the opportunity to do that and keep their ideas protected while sharing them across the world. Thank you.
Sloan.
Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you. Sean, closing remarks.
Wow, I get to be last. That means I can't go on forever and you'll cut me off again. But no, what I have to say is that really the global environment is stable because of respect for law and rule of law. And I think that we should do everything that we can to respect that and enforce laws and norms which keep an international system operating. Intellectual property is part of that, but there are many other aspects to it. And I think that here at home, we need to ensure that we respect the rule of law because we do serve as an example for the rest of the world.
Sean, thank you for that. And I get the closing remark. I'm going to build on what everyone else has said. Global matters because we're all on one planet, like it or not. We need to get along and work well together. And if we can do it in a way that's mutually beneficial, that makes it all the more important. And the way that benefit gets defined when there are conflicts is the law. It's the rule of law. So playing nice in that sandbox benefits everyone. And that said, you matter because you're a part of that global, you're a part of that law compliance, you're a part of this community where you've engaged today to take away some information. Hopefully you've put some things in the chat, and you're a part of the solution in making the world a better place. So thank you for joining. We don't have time for questions today, but drop in next week, or should I say next month, April 25th show, and we'll continue the conversation with this conga line of subject matter experts like Sean, Sloan, Andrea, Jemima, and you for the Global Chamber. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
you.